might come as a surprise, but many of the audience questions are focused around the bond issue. Mr. Daniels, how do you explain the bond issue to citizens when they ask, and the debt that comes along with it?
I think the bond issue has been thoroughly vetted by the committees that have been working on it, and that the bond addresses the safety and the security of our students. To not have storm shelters at our schools is unacceptable. I heard someone earlier today say, well, only one student has ever died in school during a tornado. That's appalling to me, because what if that was your student? What if that was your child? We need storm shelters in our schools. We need to have accessible areas so that all students have access to equal education. There's schools that are not ADA compliant. Roosevelt has a shelter, but the kids in wheelchairs and things can't get down to it because you have to go downstairs. We have to make sure that we're providing an equal education to all students regardless of their abilities. And those safe and secure entrances are critical. We always say, well, that could never happen here. That's what every community says until it does. We have to hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And this bond addresses some of those issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, when you're ready.
Well, if you're an opponent of the bond, I'm afraid I'm not your candidate. I was on the vision team that was part of the community team that came together to develop our ideas. There was also a teachers team and a district team, and then we all came together and combined our ideas and argued and fought and finally came up with a plan to present to the board. You know, the last bond we passed was for the current high school, and that was 30 or 40 years ago. This bond is a 30-year bond, which will provide schools that will last another 30, 40, or 50 years. While nobody wants to increase their own taxes, I think we have to realize that it's time for a bond to be passed. This is totally different than the last bond. I've heard people say that it's just a rehash of the old bond, but it's not true. The last bond was the result of a facility needs assessment developed 10 or 12 years ago, and then revisited every few years, packaged together by the board or advisors to the board, and then promoted as a bond. I think the board and I think the citizens the board does realize and citizens should realize that this is a totally different process. There was citizen engagement from the very beginning, and it's just time for us to pass a bond.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bickle, when you're ready.
So I would say probably the most important thing, and I've said this from day one, even back to the first bond that was unsuccessful. The most important part of this is the education piece and getting out there and making sure people understand not only what it covers, but how at the end of the day is it going to affect me as a citizen of the community. What is it going to do to my taxes? You know, what is it going to do to, you know, the schools? How is it going to affect my kids? So on and so forth. So I think that education piece and really making sure people understand that is extremely important. As Mr. Walker alluded to, taxes. Nobody likes them, and I'm right there with you. I don't like taxes any more than the next person, but I also feel to an extent that we also have to look at this from a long-term investment in our community. And it's one of those things that with bonds, and again, as he alluded to, we have not had a bond in this community for years. If you look at any surrounding community anywhere around here, they've had not only one, but 2 or 3 or 4 bonds to go through and do this. So I feel that we've done a terrific job. Our maintenance staff, the district in general has done a great job of keeping up to date with what we have here. But at the end of the day, I think it's something that we do have to reevaluate this. I think this time around, we've done a good job of listening to the community. I think the vision team and the different groups have gone out. They've really listened to everybody, the focus groups, everything with that. And I think that's been the most important thing, is going out there and making sure that people understand exactly what's going on. So.
Thank you very much. Ms. Young, when you're ready.
I've been learning about the school bond just like the rest of you have through the news, through listening in on board meetings and attending some of their tours of the elementary schools. I'd like to point out what the role is with the school board with the bond isn't actually to create the bond. So the school board did not come up with the bond. It was a team of professionals and a whole bunch of volunteers who put a lot of energy into this and had taken what people had like what they didn't like the first time and revamped that and came back with a new bond. I really believe that the district does need a bond. What that bond actually looks like, if this is the bond or not, I don't know. That's up to the community to vote. I think the board made the right decision to put it in front of the community and let them decide, because the vision team did put a lot of energy into it. I would say that, yes, it is large, but there had been this state law putting a limit on Kansas bond issues, and I'm not quite sure what that limit is, but this 78 million bond issue goes above that limit, and that's because this is our one chance to be allowed to have a bond that big. Even the state of Kansas is saying, hey, look, we know you guys need a bond. You should put a lot more money to it and do it this time.